Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road for what is a big game for Norwich City this evening in the Premier League. They host Crystal Palace, of course, hoping to work themselves out of the relegation zone. Again, 3 points does feel like it would be rather significant in their bid for survival this season, and we're about a minute away from getting the team news. Paddy Davitt joins me. Pad, before the team news comes out, and on the basis that I may have to cut across you in about any time, what are you kind of feeling ahead of the team coming out?
Well, I mean, depends on the Josh Sargent news for me, Connor. I think if he's available, I think he plays. And you think it'd be Poeta who drops out. And then it's this, well, it feels like we've spoken since the final whistle against Wolves about a 3 in the middle, a 2 in the middle, and who are they? So we're about to find out very, very quickly.
Yes, we are going to find out right now, Paddy. And it is, interestingly, you say much of the debate has been framed around formation. Norwich City go with a 4-4-2 this evening. Angus Gunn in goal, Aarons, Hanley, Gibson and Williams the back four. Poeta comes in on the right-hand side. Lise Malou and McLean the midfield two. Rashica on the left with Adamida and Timu Pukki up front. The subs bench, Michael McGovern, Sam Byram, Christoph Zimmerman returns to the bench. Demetrius Yanulis, Matthias Norman, Billy Gilmore, Kieran Dow, Christoph Solis and Jonathan Rowe. So it's a 4-4-2 for Norwich City this evening, Pad. And much of, as you said, much of the discourse before this game has been dominated about which direction Dean Smith will go in terms of formation. He's decided to stick with a formation that's produced 2 wins from the last 2 Premier League games. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can see why he's gone with the 4, or why he's reverted, if you take the Wolves game out of the equation, to the 4-4-2 that served them so well against Everton and against Watford. So I'm not surprised personally that he opted to go that route, even though, technically you could maybe sort of match up Palace if we assume that they're in their normal shape. Just looking at their team news, Elise's playing, Gallagher's playing. Both of those weren't available, or they weren't available, were they, for the 3-0 win over Christmas. So that doesn't make the task any easier. But in terms of Norwich, not surprised by the formation. A little bit surprised that he hasn't felt, because ultimately Matthias Norman, you would think he's probably not going to last the game, rather than you couldn't get a good hour out of him. Would it be better to start him? And then if he did, as you would expect, given his layoff tyre, you have other options on the bench. But no, he's gone, essentially with the 2 who finished at Vicarage Road, McLean and Pierre Lise Malou. So I guess what that message is that as a player, if you go out there, you perform individually, but also part of a collective who get the result, as they did at Watford, then on you go again. And as a result, I'm looking through the rest of that lineup, and the only change from the Watford game is Poeta for Sargent. No Sargent at all tonight, so that's an enforced change, which leads you to think, as we said right at the outset, if Sargent had been fit, I think he comes in, Poeta goes out, and it's essentially not the Watford starting lineup, because of course Sorensen started that game, but with his unavailability, the team that finished. It's a great opportunity again for McLean and Lise Malou. And one thing is for sure, they need to perform as individuals and as a unit, because if they don't, they can just look to the bench and they see Norman there, they say Gilmore there. They even could, you argue, see Dowell in there as well. So it's a big night for those two as a pair. But I'm pretty sure at some point we'll be seeing a Matthias Norman. Gilmore, I think most of us probably felt he wouldn't go with Gilmore tonight from the start. I think that would have probably opened up quite a lot of questions, particularly if the result and the performance hadn't gone the way they hoped. We only need to go back to Sellers Park and the negative reaction around Gilmore's performance that day particularly. So not surprised at all. Gilmore's on the bench. A little bit surprised he's trusted McLean and Lise Malou over Norman. But ultimately, Dean Smith sees these players day in, day out. They will know exactly what stage of the recovery Matthias Norman's at. And if they feel maybe not quite for a start, then you obviously go with Dean Smith's judgment on this, because he knows exactly what Matthias Norman can give him tonight. So other than that, not surprised Pukki's gone back in again alongside Adamida. And Adamida, as Dean pretty much alluded to yesterday, just needs to get back to his Watford-Everton levels, maybe rather than his Wolves level.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just seen Patrick Vieira do his pre-match press. We're now watching Dean Smith go through Crystal Palace haven't won a Premier League game since that win against Norwich at the back end of December, which is quite remarkable considering how much praise they've received this season. They line up like this: Waiter in goal, Ward, Anderson, Gahey and Mitchell the back four, Hughes, Schlupp and Gallagher the midfield three, with Elise, Mateta and Zaha the front three. So they're in a 4-3-3. Their subs: Butland, Klein, Tompkins, Milicevic, MacArthur, Eze, Ayew, Benteke and Edouard. So some real quality and pace on the bench for them as well, which maybe illustrates how difficult it could be tonight for Norwich City. Certainly, as this level always proves and shows, there's certainly no winnable games, I suppose, in that sense. All very tough, and that is what Norwich City will have to overcome tonight, but they've done that in the last two games. Pat, as you mentioned, you kind of spoke about Pukki and the decision. I guess it's kind of tied into the formation about whether Dean Smith would go for one like he did at Wolves on Saturday, or opt for a two. And he has decided to pair Teemu Pukki and Adam Eder together. How much do you think that is based on maybe what we saw or perhaps didn't see from Adam Eder on Saturday at Molineux?
To a degree, Connor, but I think ultimately, even if Adam Eder had maybe taken one of those chances and his overall performance had been slightly better, it still wouldn't have surprised any of us if he, for this game, horses for courses, brings Teemu back in and keeps Adam there and goes with the way he's gone. So I'm not sure it's necessarily a reflection on what Adam did or didn't do at Molineux. I think it's, as Dean Smith said after that Watford game, he's now, obviously Sargent not in the mix tonight, but with Sargent in there, he feels he's got a front four who all carry a threat, whether that's goals, whether that's the assist element. And Rashica, of course, looks really threatening in that regard as well. Got his assist at Watford, didn't he? So I think he just likes what he sees from that four. And okay, no Sargent available tonight, but he talked pretty well about Poeta's impact, I thought, at Molineux, and maybe just weighing up on the balance of everything, looking at Palace, I'm sure as well, because that's the type of coach him and Shakespeare are. It isn't necessarily just about what Norwich can do or can't do. It's also how can they get at the opposition, and maybe he feels with the four, that's the way they can cause this Palace back line a few issues. I'm just going to have a look at their lineup again at the back. Ward, Anderson, Guehi. I'd fancy myself against those. Not me personally, as in Norwich. I definitely wouldn't fancy me against those. But I think that's a three, that's a four that Norwich can get at, essentially. And to do that, they're going to need to have players in advanced positions. Because ultimately, Eder and Pukki, if we get their display against Everton and also against against Watford, you'd think they could cause Palace some problems. So, but that said, I then look across their midfield areas and the likes of Gallagher. He's the man who makes them tick, and you just fear that this game maybe will come down to who gets the upper hand in that middle of the park. Because if Palace get on the ball and Gallagher can do what he's very good at, which is sort of breaking into the box and that goal threat he carries, then maybe an Eder and a Pukki are going to get slightly less of the ball that we'd hope that would be the case if Norwich can establish a measure of control across the middle of the park. So, as always, it always becomes a bit of a cliche, but I think who gets the upper hand in the middle of the park, that could go a long way to deciding this game tonight for me.
What sort of game are we going to get tonight, Paddy? Because we mentioned Crystal Palace maybe not being in the best of form, Norwich City in very good form going into this game. Do you get the sense that this is going to be a bit of a scrap for Norwich City? It is going to be a fight, and it is going to be one where they're going to, I guess, similar to maybe what we've seen in the last two games, even though Watford was convincing in terms of scoreline, it was a battle for long periods of it. Would you expect a similar thing tonight, given where Norwich City are, but also the form that Crystal Palace are in? Because they're not totally out of a relegation fight yet, and in fact a Norwich City win arguably would bring them closer to struggling and looking over their shoulder maybe a little bit.
Well, I mean, I was quite surprised that the win over Norwich in December, that's Palace's last in the Premier League. So by no manner of means are they a team in decent form, winning form anyway. Won at the FA Cup at the weekend against lower league opposition. I don't think you can underestimate how big a miss. We're talking about their decent operators in midfield, but no Kouyaté again tonight. Obviously was off with Senegal. Will return an AFCON winner, but he isn't in their lineup tonight. And players, as much as it's a team game, certain individuals, do make teams tick. And the fact that he's been unavailable during this period, and Palace are yet thus far to pick up a Premier League win. I don't think that's a coincidence. Much like, as Norwich demonstrated around that period, the Palace, the Arsenal, the Villa game, you take your best players out of the side. It's very hard, as Dean Smith said, nigh on impossible for a newly promoted team to get results. Palace aren't a newly promoted team, but they still, whenever I look at them, I think there's key players that they need to have performing. And obviously one of them, who we haven't talked about, Wilfred Zaha. We all know, I think it was the last game down here in the Premier League when it was Connor Wickham, wasn't it? I think settled it late on. And Zaha and Max Aarons had a right tussle that night, and I'm looking forward to that particular battle, if that's how it shapes up. Because we know, and Elise, they are the type of players they can make something happen when maybe Palace aren't in control of the game, because they have that individual quality about them. So, yes, it's a team who haven't won in the Premier League since they beat Norwich, but they have threats, no doubt about it. And, Norwich will have to be very good without the ball again tonight. And if they are, then I just feel, you can get at that back four for Palace. But in order to be able to do that, they're going to have to be very solid across the middle of the park and obviously along the back four as well. And, another big night. We're not mentioning them yet, but another big night for Angus. Comes back in again. No Tim Krul. Kept his end up against Watford. Wasn't really tested. One or two little things he had to do towards the end of the game, but the game was already won at that point. He may be tested a little bit more tonight. So he needs to step up. And if he does, and he plays well within a team who get the result, then for him as well, knowing he's got a few more games to come in Tim Krul's absence, that's a massive thing to look out for tonight as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll end with this stat, which is Crystal Palace have conceded 12 from set pieces this season, so that could be an area that Norwich City look to exploit as well. It does feel like a big game for Norwich, particularly given what we saw last night with Newcastle winning, Burnley obviously picking up a point against Manchester United, which maybe isn't the biggest shock result in the world given how they've been going this campaign, and Watford obviously losing to West Ham. So, Pat, we'll throw it across to you. How do you see this one? How do you see this one going tonight? Because it has all the makings of. I could kind of see all three results maybe a little bit, but from a Norwich perspective, you certainly hope that this is another opportunity to really push themselves back above that drop zone, which I think would give everyone so much momentum ahead of what is two very, very difficult fixtures against two of the best teams in world football.
Yeah. Let's worry about that after this one, Connor. I think we'll have plenty of time to fret about whatever Pep and his boys or Jurgen and his boys could do to Norwich. But I don't know. I think I'm leaning towards a draw, which is a bit of fence sitting, but not the worst result. Continues that momentum, really. Continues that unbeaten curve. But I just think Norwich will have to be very good to nullify what Palace can offer. And ultimately, we just talked in our last segment, a Palace team who haven't won in the Premier League since December. If they're to avoid getting dragged into it, you see where Everton are now, you see where Leeds are, they're not that far away from those clubs, then they need to start winning a few games in the Premier League. And, they will look at coming to Norwich as an opportunity for them, particularly having won the reverse fixture. So, I'm not underestimating the threat for Palace at all, particularly when you look at the quality they've got individually in attacking areas. But, this feels like a new dawn, and, it feels like a confident group of players under Dean Smith now, and the momentum is there. We say it all the time, but these fans need to play their part as well. And if we get collectively on and off the park what we got against Everton, then maybe Norwich might have enough just to get their noses in front. But I think I'm going to settle for a draw, mate.
Good stuff, Pat. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for watching. Of course, Pinken.com and the Pinken Plus app, the place to go if you want coverage with my colleague Dave Freezer. Then download the Pinken app if you haven't already. 30-day free trial, $1.99 thereafter. Tonight would be a brilliant occasion to do it, particularly if they go and win the game. Thank you very much for watching. Let's keep our fingers crossed, and we'll see you again very, very soon.